Okay, we are live. Hey, Al.
Hey, Kim, good to
How's it
be here
going?
again with you.
Thanks. Good to have you. Oh, my hair looks crazy. So that is hair. Um,
All right.
so it's another week, another crazy week.
That sure has been.
I swear. Anyway, we might get into some of the week's events later, but it's my primary goal is to educate and expose North Carolinians to their rights that have been constitutionally violated through the actions of the governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper. And so, just to recap where we were last week, looking at the violation, I think we got through 5 of 20.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So we're just going to pick up if you guys missed last week's, because I'm still learning how to work the StreamYard thing, and it only went to YouTube. So if you go to the American Patriot Press YouTube channel, you can find last week's event or our podcast there. We've got Bamboozled North Carolina, and then of course you can watch all the episodes of Bamboozled with Nikki and Ryan and Jason. I'm sure they have got a great show for this Thursday. They usually do their podcast on Thursdays at 8:30 Eastern time, and I can't even imagine what their show is going to look like this week. So I encourage everybody to tune in. But for now, we're just going to pick up where we left off last week in exposing Roy Cooper's unconstitutional nonsense. And I think, Al, in light of, and I really don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much, but in light of what we learned this week, I think now more than ever, people need to get educated on the Constitution.
Yeah.
Because we are watching our First Amendment rights being totally absolved. Oh, well, let me just say, some people's First Amendment rights
There you
are
go.
being just crushed. I mean, what they did to Parler and that whole thing has blown my mind. And
Right.
the amount of people who are okay with that, I just sit back and I said this. We remember when Facebook deleted my personal page without warning. I remember thinking, I know there was a lot of people who were happy that didn't have to see my post or my opinions on my, sharing my worldviews or my political views or whatever. But it's all funny till it happens to you. And
Right.
if they think that, if anyone thinks that it can't happen to them, then they're in for a rude awakening. And
Yeah,
so
they are. Yeah, they are.
it's kind of, I think the timeliness of exposing people to the Constitution, begging them to learn their fundamental inalienable rights, I think is bigger now more than ever, because it's not just about today, but it's about tomorrow and my kids tomorrow. And if I have grandchildren, they're tomorrow. It's about the next 400, 2,000 years,
Well, it is. And, you're talking about the Constitution, Kim. I want to go over real quick the preamble to the United States Constitution first. And just the point that you were making about future generations. I'm going to read this, and that is exactly what they were talking about. It says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union." Now, remember, it says more perfect union. It doesn't ever say that we are a perfect union.
Right.
It's a continuing thing. It's a struggle. It's an effort to get there. Establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare. And here's the thing, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves, meaning their generation that wrote it, and our posterity, meaning all generations of Americans who were coming down the line afterwards. Okay. Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And so we are that posterity. Okay, what they started, what they fought for, what they died for, what they sacrificed for, during the Revolutionary era, and then all the way up to the incredible miracle that took place in Philadelphia, against all odds, that this document was going to come forth and be the greatest political document ever written in history, that was giving to the masses of people, equal opportunities, in the sense that we were going to be a nation of laws and not of individuals. That it was going to apply equally from the president all the way down to the lowest person in society. Unheard of. That's why the rest of the world laughed when they saw this thing, thinking it's never going to work, right? So we are that posterity, Kim, and we have an obligation, I think, to take up the banner. And this is our time. This is our turn in this fight. And the other generations had, different world wars they were involved in, and fighting different economic battles throughout American history. This is, and in our lifetime, we've had our issues of things, but this is unlike anything we've ever faced.
In our lifetime, yeah.
Certainly.
Back to 1776,
Yes, absolutely. And to realize the fight is not so much on the physical battlefield anymore. It's in the digital world.
Yeah.
The things that can be done digitally to people, ruining their lives. The social credit score, which was founded in China. Now, they may not call it a social credit score here yet, but they're basically doing the same thing. When you talk about deplatforming certain businesses because of their political views, that's violation of different civil rights acts. Okay, that you're denying people access, especially on some of these big corporations. They're publicly traded corporations that are just blatantly violating people because they think by the time it goes to court, these companies will be destroyed because they've been totally dependent upon this digital world.
Yeah.
And I always saw that as a problem.
And what is that? Being bamboozled.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, even when I was a police officer and was seeing that the entire governments from top to bottom, police departments, everything, were depending so much on computers in the digital world, my simple question was, okay, what happens if somebody shuts it down? Oh, they can't do that. They can't do that. Well, and then all of a sudden, these different individuals, these criminals, probably organized crime elements or whatever, started into this ransomware stuff that they're going to hook into these government computers and hold it hostage until the government's paid, millions and millions of dollars for them to release their computer systems. And power outages, they go down, the systems go down. Now you're crippled, not because there's no physical backup, and younger people are not being trained how to do things by hand. Okay, and that's true. I mean, you see, whether it's your emergency medical services or your hospitals or your police departments. And I see it now. There's so many young people that have no idea how to read an actual paper map to navigate driving their car. Everything's off GPS, and they punch in their thing and say, I know where I'm going. No, you don't know where you're going. You actually don't know how to navigate.
You just know how to follow directions.
You're following a direction of a computer. And so it's funny, there's people I've traveled with and I'd say, show me this on the map. They're like, I don't, what are you talking about? How's this thing work, this map? And to me, that's very dangerous. It leaves us very vulnerable.
Absolutely.
To a centralized power structure that can control everything. And that's what we're seeing going on here. It's a centralization of all power into a small group of people. And that's what our Constitution wanted to prevent, the centralization of power.
Oh, yeah. It's stated in there.
And because, Kim, people don't understand this concept in here.
Absolutely.
They think it's a good thing. Oh, they'll put all my banking records digitally and my health records, and I don't have
This
to
is
worry
our
about that stuff.
GPS to life, people. This is our GPS to life.
That's it.
And this isn't info wars. It's not conspiracy. This is our inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I feel like if people don't learn this and understand this and know how to take care of themselves, it leaves them all open to being submissive to whatever they're now told to do because it's too late.
Yeah.
And it just baffles my mind at the amount of people who don't see it. Like it just there's something, I think I've said it before. You told me early on when we met that once you see it, it can't be unseen. And now I see just little bits and parts on social media from my friends or whatever. And I just am like, wait, what? So I give you an example. A friend of mine said something about, posting up that something about there's going to be a riot in all 50 states or something like that on the week of the 20th or something like that. Yeah. And some friend of hers posted, I hope they lock them all up and imprison them. And I just wrote, hell yeah, maybe they'll do that for the ones that did all that this summer. And because the one thing I've never been is I have been consistent in how I feel about things. I don't shift how I feel about things because it's my team doing the cheating or another team doing the cheating. I don't like cheating.
Right.
And so she comes back and she's like, just keep scrolling, Kim. You can't even compare this to racial equality. And I was like, where did I say that I was comparing anything to racial equality? What I was saying is anyone who destroys property, burns down cities, loots businesses, scares the crap out of people, that's no acceptable way to get any message across. I don't care what your message is. I don't care what group you're in. It's unacceptable. It's a completely different thing from peaceful protesting. 99, right. I have heard it in more than one place. 99% of the people that went to DC last Wednesday were peaceful.
I'm sure.
And so it's like how her mind just twisted so quick into thinking that I was downgrading what happened to George Floyd. What happened to George Floyd is just as disgusting to me as what happened to that officer that was beaten and died as a result. I don't care who did it. It's disgusting. But
right.
It's
and that's
you can't even squeeze logic in there and consistency.
Well, we were talking about the centralization and everybody having immediate access to all news and everything, and you look at the George Floyd situation, and I think when it comes to trial, there's going to be a lot of people surprised at what comes out there in reference to that. But that's a whole nother story. But the one thing is, think about it. That happened in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That is a situation for the people of Minneapolis to deal with. Okay, but because of the internet and social media, Absolutely. All things that happen in all different places that really don't concern me or you, you get inundated with it from television news, your Google box, crack box here, info crack box, right? Digital crack box, the internet on the laptop. You're inundated with this, and it's designed to drive emotions and cause wedges in people. And it's very successful at doing this, right? So now you have people fighting about an incident that it's a minor incident in the sense of the nation, but it was turned into a major incident. It's not like the Cuban Missile Crisis or something that was an actual threat to our nation or national security. but we've been inundated with this constant barrage of information from all over the world by these central communication
And those central
businesses.
communications, the ones that, encouraged people to defund the police, disband, government, whatever, are the same people who are saying, hey, these people who went to DC and did the very same things you guys did, but because of X, Y, or Z, we're now going to have them guys be domestic terrorists. And so now they all think anybody conservative or not left leaning or liberal or whatever are domestic terrorists. And
Right.
the actions were no different.
No, they really weren't. And, when I was in 2016, there were severe riots in Charlotte over a shooting death of an individual. And it went nationwide on the news. And before anybody could even get any common sense out, social media had this incident where these officers shot this innocent guy who was reading his Quran, not bothering anybody, blah, 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 blah. And this story just went crazy. And the next thing you know, the city that I live in was sworn to uphold and protect was burning, was on fire. Okay. And for quite a while, for several weeks. And at the time I was part of I was one of the members of the headquarters security unit. So a lot of the stuff happened down there right around the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department Law Enforcement Center, main headquarters. And I got to deal with a lot of reporters and stuff like that. And they kept talking about these people as being protesters. And I asked one of the reporters, I said, why do you continue to call these people protesters when they're rioters? Why are you lumping them in with people that are peacefully assembling to protest somewhere? And you keep saying they're protesters. Call them what they are. And this one reporter, she told me, she said, that is what we are told to say.
Oh.
She said, part of the problem is I travel around and I do this, and the company I work for, I have to pay out of my pocket for my travel time and my room and board. And then when they accept what I'm doing, they'll reimburse me. But if I don't do or say what they're telling me and they don't put me on air, I don't get reimbursed.
Wow.
Okay. So they were being told to call these people protesters, and they were far from protesters. And what it did, it was giving the impression to the public, training people, anytime you hear of a protest, oh, stay away, it's going to be violent and everything else. And that's not true. In fact, our First Amendment right here talks about this, and it says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of their grievances. And I remember there was a certain news anchor who has a brother that's a governor of a northeastern state who made the comment, well, nowhere in the Constitution does it say that
open businesses back up because it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Because I didn't see that coming after the election.
This individual said, well, nowhere in the Constitution, the First Amendment, does it say that protest has to be peaceful.
I remember him saying that.
It says the right of the people to peaceably assemble. Right. There it is. And this individual claims that he went to law school and everything, but I guess he missed that line there. Yeah. But anyways, there's a lot of stuff going on, and the danger of all centralization of power violates what this document's about. Specific powers to specific levels of government, and no one part of it is able to become centrally strong. And we've lost that. Why have we lost it? Because people aren't reading the document. The population is not reading the document, and they're not voting for people seeking public office to be their legislators and representatives that read this document. Those
and
people are
where
playing
it goes
politics.
to stand by it.
Right. So because they've never read it and they're not required to read it. And so they're just doing what they have to do to gain political favor just to continue to be elected, make their business contacts, and leave office in a pretty good position.
Yep.
If they can. And so, but that comes down to the fault of the public.
Yep.
Okay. I hate to say it, folks. If you're not reading your Constitution, you don't know it, and you're going into the voting booth, you're doing a great disservice to your country and to your fellow citizens. They keep saying vote, vote, vote. And I said, no, if you don't know what's going on, don't vote. You're doing more harm by doing that. Be involved and know your Constitution and read it. And that is what I applied, Kim, to those articles of impeachment that I wrote. Okay. And now all of a sudden, because everything's going on, people have noticed that I did this back during my campaign.
Right.
Now they're all like, tell us about this. Tell us about this.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here, right?
A few months ago when I was trying to shout this message,
people laughed at me. It's never happened. What happened one time in North Carolina where a governor was impeached, called up on impeachment. And, then there's this time. So, but like I said, they just thought it was a joke or a campaign stunt. And trust me, it was not. It was not, because I'm still pushing for this and I'm not running a campaign anymore. Right. So that's why you've got me here on these sessions, so we can talk a little bit more about these impeachment things. And if you like, I just want to recap a couple of things that we went over last week, and then we'll get started. So, we talked about, the way I set up these articles, Kim, is I went from where this governor's executive orders violated the federal Constitution and Bill of Rights first. Okay. Now, one area, if you go into, is if you look at Article 4, Section 4 of your United States Constitution.
I got 18,000 books around here.
Well, just get the one that the number 2 in importance. The number 1, in my opinion, is the Bible.
Yes.
And number 2 in importance.
Speaking of that, in watching some of the Senate hearings, watching some of the House hearings, or not House hearings, but meetings, I was floored at how they manipulated the words in the Constitution. Yeah. I mean, it was so lawyer-esque. And I just couldn't sit there but think and say, gosh, I bet these are the same people that manipulate how they wanted to work. Like, Jesus is a man of now, and like yesterday's message didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but you're right.
As a matter of fact, if you don't mind, before we lead into that, there's something you were talking about, the preamble of the Constitution. In my book that I got here, the Constitution, in the back of it, it's got 10 popular myths. One is that the Constitution is a myth. The Constitution is old-fashioned, and so the response to that would be protecting inalienable rights would not grow old. We all wonder, is it old-fashioned? If so, the next question must be, which part is old-fashioned? The Constitution controls the political powers that protect our rights. Changing those privileges and constraints exposes our rights to political abuse and eventual destruction. Mm-hmm. And so when I was watching them start to try to manipulate, and again, you wouldn't know they were manipulating it if you didn't actually know it. They make it sound just as good as the best minister on the planet who manipulates the word. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I when I was reading through that back in the summer, that's how I felt about that. And so it therefore makes it even more sensible to get familiar with, because just like everything else, you're going to be given an interpretation that fits a narrative. Right. If you're not solid in your fundamental understanding of this, it just it puts us all on thin ice.
Well, it absolutely does. And just look at your personal experience. At this time last year, would you have known if they were bamboozling you about the words of the Constitution?
Absolutely not. No.
And why?
Would have
And
had
why?
no idea. Why wouldn't I have known it?
Yeah,
Because I didn't know. I mean, I knew the First Amendment let me say what I wanted to say. I knew the Second Amendment would let me shoot a gun. And I knew the Fifth Amendment meant I didn't have to tell on anybody if I went to court. That was my, and the 13th Amendment ended slavery.
right.
I couldn't have told you which amendment it was that gave women the right to vote. Definitely couldn't have told you anything else that I know today about a man's house is his castle, doing things, distributing authority with an equal and fair hand. I would have had no earthly idea about that.
Exactly. And if you were watching hearings and you had some senator come up with his nice suit and what has been written for him by his aides and stuff, who are attorneys most of the time, and he reads off this thing that's a manipulation, most people, it goes over their head because the population has been bamboozled. Let's stick with that word. Almost by a priest class of in the legal system, right? To make you think, well, you're not capable of understanding this Constitution. It takes these people to go into these incredible rooms, the halls of justice, where these magnanimous people that are so smart come out with their robes on, and and they go through and they read this stuff, and because you, the common man, are not smart enough to understand this and read it for yourself, which the reality is you are, and it was written for us to be able to understand it.
Absolutely.
Okay, to understand what's going on, and the brilliance and the genius and the simplicity of this, and how it has thwarted potential tyrants for over 200 years in its simplicity. And when public education, one of the main things that they should be teaching is your Declaration of Independence, your Constitution, your Bill of Rights. That ought to be foremost of what's being taught in school, so citizens understand what it is that protects the liberties of us, we the people. That's not even being taught anymore. In fact, there in certain states, there were radical leftists that were pushing years ago for the movement to throw out the Declaration of Independence because Thomas Jefferson owned slaves. So, and there's a few things in there that are not politically correct if you read through it.
Yeah.
So we should not even mention the Declaration of Independence in the school system anymore. So this is where
ended.
Yeah, somebody might get offended by it, and that's not what the country's about. The country's not even about equality, Kim. The country's about liberty.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That's what it's about. Other countries, communist nations, claim the banner of equality. They don't claim the banner of liberty, and that's what makes us different. Or at one time it did.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to say that where we're going right now, we're going to fall right in line with all those other countries, and that's it. The dominoes have fallen for liberty. So, I think we do have to put the blame on the populace for failing to pick up those documents and read them. And you've read them. They're not. It doesn't take very long to read them.
It doesn't. And then once you just read the simple versions, like that's in this book, it makes you want to go to the more complicated versions, the more details, and learn the sections and the articles and what was amended and when it was amended. And there's only been 2 amendments that were ratified. It's like, and prohibition being one of them, which I am thankful for that. But when it comes to using the Constitution as a power tool now, because I've heard more about the Constitution in the last 10 days than I've heard in my entire life. And I think it's interesting because it's like a trend. They know that the right has these patriots, and these patriots are sharing their word of constitutional obligations from the government and our rights, and nobody can step on those. Don't tread on me. And I see how the left has adapted. And so where we can go at somebody and say, You might think that's funny that they shut Parler down, but wait till it's something you like.
Oh
And
yeah, or it's
but
you.
before we even get there, now it seems like they've picking up their Constitution for Dummies book and are manipulating it to empower those against us to fight us with the same material. But it's like, but that's not right. What you're being told is not right. That's somebody's opinion or interpretation, but that's not how it is. Oh, well, who are you to say that it's right? Were you the one that wrote it? Like, well, I mean, I just don't have to argue with it. I don't
No,
have to justify it. It is as it is.
it is as it
You're
is.
the one that's manipulating it. I didn't
Yeah.
write the damn thing. Go back and look and see the original version. You can see what it says.
And you know, and the documents are there in history when a lot of the issues we're dealing with today, they dealt with early on in the country, because that's when the country was the most vulnerable to things and changes and stuff. And so a lot of the challenges that we're seeing have already happened. And those closest to the time that the Constitution was ratified, they were the best ones to know what the meaning of it was, because they were there. So when
And
the cases
they were
came up,
and they came, well, they were there, and they came here to make sure that this would be something that wasn't that, the
right,
very thing they were escaping from.
right. And you know, like I said, when constitutional case laws were coming up shortly after the Constitution was ratified, those judges and that, they were involved in the writing of the Constitution and the making up of the government. So when a case come up and they made a ruling on it, they understood what they meant when they put it in there, and they would rule on things accordingly. So the writings and stuff of what was meant by the Constitution are there. The Federalist Papers, you know, that's another great writing, because a lot of the questions we have in there, when you're talking about, you know, Madison and Hamilton and John Jay, that those guys were right there. So they were addressing these issues of what were the common objections to the Constitution, and then they would say, this is what this meant, you know, and they would go into it. Who better to use as a tutorial on the document than the guys that wrote it,
Right.
given the reasons for it. So the information's there. Is what does this mean? Well, it's plain simple. Just go back and read it. It's there. You know,
I posted a meme, or I guess you call it a meme, on Facebook several times, and it says it's not that the Constitution needs to be rewritten, it's that it needs to be reread. And I always put or read for the first time
read for the first time.
at the top.
Well, and you know, when we look at, like I said, Article 4, Section 4
Okay.
of it, going into this impeachment issue with a governor like Roy Cooper, King Cooper, who start governing by executive order or dictatorship, kingship. Well, Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution states very, very clearly, the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government, and shall protect each of them against invasion, and on application of the legislature or of the executive, against domestic violence. Okay, so the federal Constitution guarantees each one of us as citizens living in a state that state must have a republican form of government. And folks, no, it doesn't mean the Republican Party or the Democratic vote or the Democratic Party. The republican form of government, meaning, of course, if you got a group of citizens that live in an area, they themselves work just like you worked and everybody else. You don't have time to deal with the daily issues like in a democratic society where every night you have to go down and discuss and debate and vote on this issue or that issue. So a Republican form of government, you get together as a group and say, we're going to elect this person to be our representative and sit on this council or on this legislature. And then they make their decisions based on what we want, but hold it up to the Constitution. And if it passes constitutional muster, they represent us and they handle those issues. That's a Republican form of government. What has King Cooper done this past year? Has he gone through a legislative process?
Absolutely not. He scared people into believing what he's saying is helping them and saving their lives.
Exactly. So right off the bat,
like King Como upstate or
right,
up north, you know, now that we're approaching January 20th, is like, well,
you're gonna have to open businesses up, and yeah,
yeah, exactly. And I mean, the thing about it is, if I were to put, well, and I put his tweet on another social media platform, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't see that coming. And thinking, well, wait till somebody tells me how insensitive I am, or this is what all y'all anti-maskers have wanted, was putting businesses before lives. And, it's just such a constrained.
yeah, it is. It's a nonsense philosophy. It makes absolutely no sense that, when you go into a business and you can take your mask off anyhow, once you walk 3 feet into the door and sit at a table.
Yep.
I mean, really?
And air circulation just
circulation going around and everything else, and you're wearing a mask that promotes bacteria buildup and CO2 buildup and all kind of health issues and stuff. If people would just look at it logically, then they'd realize it's just about
they could look at it logically if the crap hadn't been scared out of them.
Sure.
And if you looked at King Cooper's, I forget what you call it, but when he got on the news every week and to deliver our metrics, what did you call that?
What his daily, I forget what I said, but basically his news briefs that he was on there all the time.
Yeah, but like it was like his free promotion for running for governor.
Well, that's what it was. Yeah, it was his infomercial.
Yeah, his infomercial. That's it.
Yeah,
it's like they would take these numbers and these graphs that just numerically went like this, but nobody ever thought to take those same numbers and look at them statistically and how that fit in with the population of 10.5 million North Carolinians. So when you've got something that goes from 0 to 10,000, it looks tragic. It looks scary. And I'm not dismissing the validity of COVID. I know that it has wreaked havoc on the world. I don't dismiss that. I dismiss the scare tactics that they put behind this virus.
Yeah, and using this virus as a means to shut us down and make us submit. Yeah, and make us submit. And that, and that's the whole thing. And that is why, like I said, I wrote these articles up. So, right off the bat out of the federal Constitution, it's Article 4, Section 4. He has denied us a Republican form of government, right? I mean, it's clear. He's ruled by dictate. And the Republican Party and the leadership, and, to all you Republicans out there that thought that this party was a party that was looking out for your interest, and I kept telling people through my campaign, they're not, and caught all kind of grief, from these people. And now they're contacting me and say, I wish I would have listened to you. They're a bunch of traitors and
so do we.
Trust them. So yeah, you should have voted for me. Now you didn't. Now you're going to have to suffer, right? So, anyways, but it's a shame. It really is. All joking aside, and calling on this, his violation of our First Amendment rights, and I mean he did it, by violating free speech. Okay, and they're shutting free speech down. He's not stopping or stepping into places. The news media, the corporate news media, they had a blackout on me. So I experienced their corruption. They're corrupt in the fact they tell stories in a certain way. They leave out other things that they don't want in there. And they take a certain point of view of it, and that's all they promote. Okay, they don't tell the whole story. They tell part of the story. And when you take an oath to testify in court, part of that oath is to tell the truth, the whole truth. Not part of it, but the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And the news media fails to do that every day on a daily basis.
Oh yeah,
they've got their own agenda. So, the First Amendment issue to peaceably assemble I mean, he took that away. You talk to Ashley Smith, Reopen NC, when she got arrested and they used the trumped up charge that she stepped on the sidewalk, which is public property. It's public
Right.
domain. Just because it's in front of the governor's mansion doesn't mean it's still not a public sidewalk. If they should have had it blocked off, fenced
Right.
off, whatever, and said, do not step on the
Well,
sidewalk
and
here.
it's interesting. I actually haven't heard that finer detail, but when, I was going through the permitting process for the rally,
Mm-hmm.
it was described to me exactly that from the sidewalk edge and the grass to the fence, anything off the edge of that sidewalk and the grass, that was the governor's mansion's property.
Right.
From that sidewalk to the street was public property.
Right.
So whether she was on the sidewalk or off the sidewalk, as long as she wasn't on the grass,
Mm-hmm.
it should have. She wasn't even there. She wasn't even at the governor's mansion, right? She wasn't like that close.
No, I think she was just out in front, and they were
Yeah.
protesting out there. And she'd be an interesting one to have on if she would come on to tell her story. But it is a very interesting story. And, she gets arrested for it when the week before you had people burning that city down, and because you live there. And what did that king do? What did he do? He came out. COVID got pushed to the back burner, and you even had,
I don't even have the math to show you.
Dr. Mandy Cohen, the doctor who's not a doctor.
Like this.
Yeah. The doctor who's not a doctor. She made the statement when she was asked about, well, are these protesters going to cause an increase in COVID? She says, well, we don't know about that, but we have to uphold the right of people's First Amendment to peaceably assemble. She can't deny she said that because that's on tape. Okay, that she said it. She said it on TV. So then Reopen NC comes up, and this happens, and they're saying they're spreading the virus and
super spreaders, guilt trip,
super spreaders, and this and she gets arrested for putting her foot on the sidewalk. Okay, which is just ridiculous. So you've got, in addition to shutting down the churches, saying the churches were non-essential. Okay, who are you to say that somebody's faith, practicing their faith, and a big part of that is worshiping together with other believers, that's not essential? But in the meantime,
also the preamble in both the godliness of it all is in the preamble of the United States Constitution, the North Carolina Constitution, and covered inside the First Amendment.
Yes, it is. It's covered in there. So here's a violation of that. And then saying, well, you can't have your services, or it has to be limited to so many people, and people getting arrested, ministers that were getting arrested for having church services and stuff. But in the meantime, you can go to a liquor store or anything else. Strip club clinics were open, everything else, Walmart, whatever. Oh, they're essential. You can go there. That's fine. That's fine. And so there was several violations of our First Amendment right to the federal Constitution. The 14th Amendment, the equal protection.
You do realize then, after that situation with Reopen NC, and I really think that's where a lot of constitutional awareness maybe began. It's not where it began for me, but I think it's where it maybe began, because I know that within the flip of a switch, Cooper did address that as a First Amendment right to peacefully assemble.
Yes, he did.
And you have the little caveats to that. So you can't go to a salon and get your hair done, and you can go to Walmart. And it was kind of like when we as business people were being, affected by the coronavirus, and then you had the mess downtown. There's this double whammy, and that's, as you know, that's where I became more aware of the Constitution, because I was like, something about this isn't right. But it took Ashley stepping on that sidewalk. I can't imagine where North Carolina would be right now had she not. I'm sure it was traumatic for her.
Yeah, it was. Sure it
But
was.
she's a North Carolina hero to me
Mhm.
because I think had she not made that step, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Well,
Because that was the whirlwind that brought all of us together, I think.
well, yeah, and I remember when that happened, and I was just sitting there going, "You see where it's going?" People, trying to tell people because I was campaigning then. You see where it's going now. Selective prosecution of things, failure to a failure of our 14th Amendment right of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Certain businesses are okay, other ones aren't. Certain barbers or hairstylists were certainly allowed to work because Cooper was getting his hair cut, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah.
So somebody was cutting his hair. I don't think he does like me and cuts his own hair, but
He's got some mad
anyways,
skills if he does. I'll give him that.
what's that?
He's got mad skills if he was doing that.
Yeah, so we know that's not happening. But so like I said, deciding what businesses he decided what businesses were essential, violating the Equal Protection Clause under the law, deciding which groups could protest and which ones couldn't protest, which ones he would march arm in arm with, and the other ones he'd have people arrested for. Um, the denial of the moral denial of what he did, not allowing people to attend funerals of their loved ones,
Yep.
especially the military when they died, not allowing them to have military funerals over this whole thing. It was just tragic. It's a tragic situation. So, yeah, he violated, those three things: denying a Republican form of government, denying the First Amendment rights of us in so many areas, and denying the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. So, right there, those are three issues of articles of impeachment, because he did take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights in the state of North Carolina and the laws of North Carolina. And he failed to do that when he started violating our constitutional rights right there. That's all they should have needed to go ahead and start impeachment on him. But outside of that, let's move on to what he denied in the North Carolina Constitution.
Okay.
Article 1, Section 1, North Carolina State Constitution. Okay? The equality and rights of persons. We hold it to be self-evident that all persons are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Amongst these are life, liberty, the enjoyment of the fruits of one's own labor, and the pursuit of happiness. How many people's lost everything, denying them to enjoy the fruits of their labor because he stole it from them? Okay, he destroyed their businesses, and now they,
It's
you
still
know,
the
they,
businesses.
of course, and he's proud of it. He's proud of it. He said he was, because of what he's doing to stop COVID-19 spread, which it's not stopping. So obviously, what they're
Clearly.
doing is not working, right? But of course, they're going to blame the few minority of us that are standing up for our rights.
It's because, all those mean, selfish, hateful people aren't wearing masks. I don't know about where you live in the Mecklenburg area, but I can tell you I'm in Wake County,
Mm-hmm.
and I am from Wayne County, which is a little more east. And it doesn't matter where I go, everybody's wearing a mask.
Yeah.
So for Wake County specifically to be and have been a red county, you'll never convince me that it's working. I still say it'll all be over when the election's done. I've been saying it and I
Well,
hate.
suddenly the curve will be slowed, won't it?
Oh, well, no, that was after 2 weeks.
Well, I'm saying now the election's over, we'll
Oh,
finally have slowed the curve
mm-hmm.
for the hospitals, right?
Well, businesses now matter, or
Yeah.
mental health now matters, or who knows the reasons that
Right.
overdoses are now matter, domestic abuse now matters, child abuse now matters.
Right.
I just get me angry now. Anyway,
So, so the equality of rights, and we wrote, as we just basically, I said, he has denied the people their rights to own and operate a business by declaring certain businesses as essential and others non-essential. He has done this in an arbitrary and capricious manner without due process of law. Thus, taking on the role of a dictator and not an elected governor that is bound by the rule of law, Republican form of government again. Okay. And whereas Governor Roy Cooper usurped the rights of the people with his executive orders that violates Article 1, Section 7 of the North Carolina Constitution, suspending laws.
Yeah.
So all power of suspending laws or the execution of laws by any authority without the consent of the representatives of the people is injurious to their rights and shall not be exercised. I mean, this guy was just disregarding law left and right.
Yeah.
That was out there. They're so numerous that I didn't even feel like I needed to go in and list them, which I certainly can do that and just go ahead and probably add those in here because as time goes by, people tend to forget. But the number of laws he was violating and refusing to enact other laws that he was lawfully supposed to go ahead and enforce, like, you know, the riots that were going on. You want to talk about insurrections?
Amen.
Are you kidding me? And somebody that was aiding and abetting an insurrection. I'll get into that because that's one of the articles that I wrote. But his executive orders, he violated Article 1, Section 12 of the North Carolina State Constitution, the right of assembly and petition. Once again, not only is that a violation of your First Amendment right, it's also a violation of the North Carolina State Constitution, Section 12, Article 1, Section 12. So even though it's one act, it violated both
Right.
constitutions.
Double whammy.
Yeah, both constitutions. Let's see, Article 1, Section 13, once again, religious liberty, violating the North Carolina Constitution and the First Amendment and the federal Constitution, right? Once again, a double whammy on those things. Let's see, as went down, Article 1, Section 14, freedom of speech and press. Once again, a violation of both constitutions. And I'm pointing this out. I'm writing this all out for these legislatures just to see it, right? And here it is. Article 1, Section 19.
Can I interrupt you on that?
Yeah.
At this point, you know, and I wish Ryan or Jason in Michigan were here because it took them so long to get to a place to even be considered about the impeachment of Whitmer.
Right.
But at this point, knowing what we now know, sending that to senators and legislative whoever's from North Carolina, do you think it's going to make a difference at this point, Al? Because I don't. And
Kim, it really doesn't matter if it makes a difference or not, because they're not going to be able to deny the fact, like they can't deny the fact the first time that they all received them and did nothing with it.
Right.
Okay?
But let's look at that. We have been talking about the First Amendment since, you know, the closures and the protests and the whatever. And yet that's not only not made a difference, it's gotten worse.
Right.
When you look at the censorship from Facebook and Twitter and Amazon and Google and all that stuff. So that again goes back to, yeah, we definitely need to give it to them. Hope for the best, but expect the worst. But bigger than that, I think what happens when we look at nominees and campaigns and stuff like that, not only just elect them, vote for them, they get elected and sit back. All right, I'm good. Cheers to your win. I'm good for 2 years, 4 years, and just let them get away with murder.
That's right.
And that's why we can sign all the petitions. We can have all the protests. We can have all these calls to action. But until we, the people, actually hold these people accountable,
Correct.
nothing's going to change.
Right.
So that's why I'm so happy to have you here with me to help people understand we can't rely solely on you putting together these articles of impeachment and sending to the legislation and it go through some sort of legislative process if we don't hold them accountable to pushing it to a legislative process.
Right. And that's the thing. You know, again, that's the whole thing. I didn't do this with the intention of thinking that those Republicans in Raleigh, who were just as complicit in this whole thing, not holding him accountable, or legislatures, because they have held to their party a higher standard than the Constitution and the rights of our people. And I've talked to a number of these Republicans that were legislatures who talked, they were all about the Constitution, this and that. Really? But yet you refused to do what was constitutionally correct and what the moral thing was to do, because you were a Republican, and the Republicans say we're doing this. So you're holding the standard of a party above the standards of law for your state and your nation. That disgusted me.
Oh,
And they know who they are, because they know who talked to me about it, and who you know, they were constitutional waivers. You know who you are, and shame on you for doing it.
We're coming for you.
What's that?
And I was going to say, we're coming for you, but in light of the current environment, it's a hyperbole, people. Yes. I'm not physically going to do anything except make my statement at the ballot box next time.
That's correct. That is correct, and that was the whole thing of this. Now you don't say you didn't know that this was out there, because it was out there, and you chose not to act upon it.
Well, you've got digital copy to that.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. The party has digital copies where they sent it, and we had certified copies sent to the House, to the Senate, to the Lieutenant Governor's office, and the Governor's office. So they knew. There's no way they can deny they didn't know about it. And, you know, like I said, they hold up their party over everything. So let's say we're talking about
19.
Section 19. Okay. No person shall be denied the equal protection of the laws, nor shall any person be subjected to discrimination by the state because of race, color, religion, or national origin. So basically, he denied people their right to worship together in the manner that they deem appropriate. However, he permitted mass gatherings of people to engage in commerce and various other business type activities, as long as the business was one that he deemed essential. Okay. So once again, he's denying people the equal protection of the laws. And that's a perfect example of it. He denied certain groups of people the right to protest without fear of arrest, who wanted to have the state of North Carolina open for commerce, while permitting another group to protest with his approval, whereby he did join with that group in their protest. Okay.
Not socially distancing and not wearing a mask.
Nope, not at all. Violating everything.
In a picture.
Yep. And he can't deny it, and he won't deny it. He doesn't like to respond to it, but he won't deny it because he can't. So Article 1, Section 21, he violates. Inquiry into restraints on liberty. Every person restrained of his liberty is entitled to a remedy to inquire into the lawfulness thereof, and to remove the restraint if unlawful, and that remedy shall not be denied or delayed. Well, what about people that are being charged because they were opening up their business because of his mandate? Okay. What, you had a guy that got charged for opening up a speedway.
Oh, yeah.
Other businesses that were being threatened.
Well, and then when they posted it as a COVID rally or some kind of rally, you know, a peaceful protest or whatever, you know,
mostly peaceful protest, right?
Mostly. Yeah. I guess he tried it that way, and they were like, no.
Right. So, I mean, once again, he's denying, you know, the restraints on liberty was his mandates of, if you do this, if you open your business or you do something, we're going to come in and we're going to shut you down. We're going to fine you. We're going to take you to jail. That is an official restraint on your liberty. Okay. Plain and simple. So he violated that.
But now just with the businesses, we're looking at Article 1, Section 1, and 24. Where were we?
We were looking at
21.
We were on 21. Yeah. Now we're at 36. Violate other rights of the people. The enumeration of rights in this article should not be construed to impair or deny others retained by the people. He has denied through his executive order the rights of families, friends, and associates to be present at the burial sites of their loved ones, a heartless and cruel act. This action is especially egregious and cruel when it comes to the burials of military veterans. His actions denied military honor burials for numerous veterans who served their country with honor and distinction, and denied the families the ability to be graveside for their deceased loved ones' internment. He has done this while permitting the memorial service of George Floyd to be held with full attendance, disregarding his own executive orders that barred memorial service with large attendance of others. He has, through his executive orders, denied the people their right to travel about freely in their normal day-to-day activities. It is required that the people, in order to function and operate in society, must adhere to wearing certain types of face masks or else face a penalty, thus reducing free people to the status of chattel. He has denied the people their right and ability as free people to engage in free trade and commerce unless the commerce has been approved by him. He has denied the people in an election year, this is key to what I experienced, in an election year, the ability to gather in public, to hear the voices of candidates for elected office. He has denied candidates for elected office their rights to campaign and meet with large groups of North Carolinians so candidates can speak to and hear the concerns of the people about their government. He has accomplished this by eliminating venues that would attract mass numbers of people for candidates to attend. And he continued this conduct to conduct televised and radio interviews without any restrictions, thus allowing himself to be the main voice to be heard by the people, while severely limiting the ability for other candidates to campaign and for the voters to hear other candidates' ideas, policies, and solutions. Whereas at least 12 sheriffs in North Carolina, some of whom are members of the governor's own political party, refused to enforce Executive Order 147 and stating it's unenforceable and unconstitutional. Okay. So there's a whole list of things right there that he's violated also. Article 3, Section 5, Kim. Governor shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. All right. He was, whereas Governor Roy Cooper was involved in malfeasance of office. He was involved in nonfeasance of office or neglect of duty, willfully failing to discharge his duties. So on June 19th, 2020, rioters destroyed the Confederate Soldiers Monument, whereas North Carolina General Statute 14-127 makes it illegal to destroy property in North Carolina, whereas Governor Cooper did violate North Carolina general statutes in pursuit of political objectives and gains without regard to due process. So what he did is he allowed these people to destroy these monuments in front of police officers. They were told to stand down and let them do it. Nobody was charged with it. Okay. Then he went ahead and violated the law by moving the statutes that he has no authority to move under the public safety statute, meaning that if a statute's falling into disrepair and could be a danger to the public, they can remove it temporarily, repair it, but they had to put it back where it was at. He said that he was removing it for public safety because criminals wanted to go ahead, break the law, and destroy the statutes. So therefore, it became a public safety issue. No, that's not how it works. Okay, that's not what it was meant for. He deliberately violated those laws for that, and there was no due process. So, you know, there were so many things that were involved in so many different statutes and monument things that he violated. But some of the worst ones, Kim, was, you know, he was supposed to enforce his Emergency Management Act. He had to go through get the concurrence of the Council of State. He refused to do that. And that was one thing that Dan Cooper tried to fight, put a lawsuit on, not an impeachment, but just a lawsuit, that he failed to do that. So Dan Forest admitted that part of the impeachment process that he was violating also. And he allowed certain groups of people, by permitting certain groups to terrorize and intimidate the people of this state, permitting groups and individuals to violate North Carolina laws by means of threatened violence against individuals and the destruction of property in an effort to extract political change. That's defined as terrorism. And what I said was he deliberately excited domestic insurrection to do this by marching with them and telling them it's okay and it was their right to do that. And he aided and abetted the terrorist actions because that's the very definition of terrorism, what they were trying to do, to exact political change through terror and intimidation.
Right.
That's what they were doing there. He aided and abetted that. He aided and abetted the interference of interstate commerce and intrastate commerce by failing to act, thus giving permission for protesters to take control of the interstate highway known as Interstate 40. You remember that? They had police escorts allowing them to lock down Interstate 40 outside of Greensboro, shutting down the highway for miles and miles, interfering with intrastate commerce. It's against the law to do that. And he
They
aided
did
and abetted that.
Boulevard in Raleigh, which is a main thoroughfare to downtown, where the governor's mansion, the legislative building, everything is down there.
Right.
Restaurants, clubs, retailers, you name it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was it. He aided and abetted that. I mean, it's a direct violation of law to do that. And then finally, we said that whereas Governor Cooper unethically sought monies from Duke Energy as a part of a permitting process for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. That was just one other thing thrown into to show how corrupt this individual is.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we could go into a lot more of those violations that he was involved in. And, so basically, we sent this to the legislature and said, here it is, right here. It's all out here. And I guess their response was, well, we won't get him removed from office in the Senate. That's not your job to worry about the Senate. You're in the House of Representatives. You do what's right.
Right.
And you follow the Constitution. When you've got somebody that has violated this many things of the people's rights, you have an obligation to bring him up on those charges and bring those charges out, and then let those senators stand up and decide who let him off the hook.
Yeah.
Publicly, and let the public see it. And but their job was to do that. And the crazy thing is, if they would have done that to him, he would not have been able to lawfully act as governor until the trial in the Senate was over. The lieutenant governor acts as governor at that point. Okay, so they basically lawfully and should have impeached him where he was not able to govern anymore. And lieutenant governor, if he would have did what he claimed he was going to do, could have went ahead and rescinded all the governor's executive orders and opened the state up. So that comes down to the complicity of what I was saying, the politicians in the Republican Party. And I hope Republicans out there are starting to look and wake up to that fact that they're rats in your party, and that party's is corrupt. It's a rotting corpse. And you need to go ahead and start looking at something else like the Constitution Party that's here to genuinely fight for your rights and your freedoms and your constitutional liberties, folks.
In a most sincere and genuine way.
Right.
Like, I've never quite seen anything like it. I haven't. And it's refreshing.
Well, you know, and you know that those of us in the Constitution Party, the leadership, that we're dedicated.
Yeah.
No, I'm not getting paid for any of this. I didn't get paid for run for a campaign. Spent a lot of time and a lot of money and effort and stuff, not asking for a penny of any of it. And that's the thing. How many Republicans would do that? Or Democrats. How many of the other parties would do that sort of thing? And that's why, because the people that come to this party, the Constitution Party, they believe in this, that it's something bigger than themselves.
Well, I guess that's, kind of sort of where the term rhino comes in, because all that we thought we were going to be getting, we haven't gotten a semblance of what we were expecting. And that's with previously. I do believe in our lieutenant governor. What's the new term? Elect, I guess you'd say.
And I think he's sworn in now, I believe.
Oh, is he?
think he was sworn in. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Because didn't they do Cooper swearing in like Saturday at some time, like totally under the radar?
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't much fanfare to it, was there?
No, nor was it on when it was supposed to be.
Right.
We thought it was going to be, well, we certainly didn't think it was going to be on a Saturday in the afternoon, you know,
Right. Yeah.
because we had some ideas, but it's like at 11 o'clock on the Friday night, we're like, wait, what? Tomorrow?
Yeah. So, and that just goes to show the gamesmanship that goes on with these people. And I like I said, I hope that, I know there are going to be people in the Republican Party. They're never going to change their mind. And I'm not talking to you.
Right.
I'm talking to you that honestly believe that was the party that was standing up for your rights until you start reading the Constitution and realize they're as far off as can be from it. They're about the Republican Party. And in fact, when I was campaigning in Fayetteville outside of a fireworks tent on a very hot day back in July, my head, I had the, my poor head was gotten sunburn out there. It was so hot. But anyways, I had an individual come up to me and said, why are you doing this? You're going to split the votes. No, I'm not going to split the vote. Vote belongs to an individual. You don't own it. And he says, well, we need to push for the conservative. And I said, no, you need to push for a constitutionalist. Okay. And he was like, no, the Constitution needs to come second. We need to push for Republicans. And I'm like, okay, really? And here he was active in his Republican Party in his county. And I'm like, there's the problem right there. No trust in the Constitution because the man probably never read it. Well-intentioned, I'm sure. But he was a Republican. He wasn't promoting the Constitution. And that's the problem, that why that party it's a rotting corpse. And it's dead. People just don't realize it yet. But more and more are realizing it. And they're saying that this is the party of the future for this state and for this country. I mean, that's just the bottom line of it. And so the hard work's been done, folks. All you need to do is join in and roll up your sleeves and get ready to fight for your freedoms and liberties. And I mean that in the political sense, like you're saying. And, this stuff where you're talking about, I hear people talking about, January 20th, where they're going to be marching armed into all these cities. Don't do it. Don't do it. Stay away from it. I think it's a big trap for a lot of people. And I'm just saying that, don't give them more fuel to their fire of what they're trying to do by painting you with this radical sort of being terrorists and killers. And it's just not something you should do. Not this time, not yet. There's a time and place for things. And I think that the atmosphere right now makes it very, very dangerous for people to try to do something like that. And it'll be used against you. It'll be used against you.
Absolutely. And we've already seen the start of that.
Sure we have.
But, maybe, and honestly, everyone, the reason I didn't really want to discuss the events of the past 6 days is for that very reason, but more importantly, to get everybody encouraged to get familiar with your rights.
Right.
And I hope that you don't just listen to what Al's saying when he's going through those articles of impeachment and he's defining what's written constitutionally to be upheld, but hear what he's saying and observe what's going on. And that is where you will join me in the seeing that you can never unsee and understand how so ridiculously close we are to not losing our First Amendment right or our Second Amendment right, but our way of life, what we and what people from other countries around the globe come here to experience. And so, again, Al, I want to thank you. We are way past our time limit there, but you can't just stop in the middle of a good flow. So again
well, I think we started a little after 9, so we're close. We're not too far over.
Okay. So again, thank you for joining me, and
keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks. I will, with encouragement from people like you.
All right.
So next week, how many did we get done today?
Got all of them.
Oh, we got all 20 in?
Got them all done. Yeah.
Wowee.
Yep. I was moving along.
Yeah, you were. Yep, we zipped right on by that.
Yeah.
But I was reading also too when you were, because there's a whole lot in Article 1, Section 37. That's a lot to read.
There is. And, but to let people know, go to the Constitutional Party of North Carolina's website. You can go ahead and you click on, you'll find the drop down list that talks about historical documents. You click on that. And we've got a whole list of historical documents right there that you can read, including the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration, Constitution of the State of North Carolina. And you know what? Something else, Kim, I don't know if you've read it or not, but I encourage people to read it. It's George Washington's farewell address.
Okay.
To the nation. And it is eye-opening. It'll blow your mind when you read it.
There's your call to action for next week. Watch or read George Washington's final address.
Farewell address. Yeah.
Farewell
you can find that on the Constitutional Party of North Carolina's website page under the historical documents section.
Awesome.
Okay. So
well, thank you again, friends. Thank you for joining us here at the American Patriot Press. That is a part of the American Patriot Council, both of which we have YouTube channels. We're on Twitter for the time being. We have not been able to really reestablish much on Facebook, but we do have a page there. But you can find us on MeWe under American Patriot Council. And when Parler comes back, we also have a page there. So just know that while the mission of the American Patriot Council is to restore and sustain a constitutional government, it's my personal mission. I think it's Al's personal mission not to just restore and restore and retain, but the sense of urgency to everyone learning this is imperative. And I hate to be a drama queen because I'm not, but I don't think that there's a more significant time that you need to not only learn them, but be ready to stand up and fight for them. And I mean that in a political sense. Right. Let's be clear. All right. All right, Al. Well, thank you so much for everything. Always great to have you joining us here. Absolutely. And we'll see you next week.
Sounds good. Take care.
All right, guys. Have a good week.